It's been over a year and a half now since I first started making videos about competitive Civ 6. Since then, my skill level has skyrocketed, and I've even reached the rank 1 position on the seasonal free-for-all leaderboard in the largest Civ 6 multiplayer community in the world. Throughout my journey, I've streamed hundreds of games on Twitch, the best of which I've chosen to highlight by uploading them to YouTube in full. In today's video, we'll be looking back on these games to pick out what I believe are the 5 strongest paces I've ever set in multiplayer Civ 6. First off, let's establish the criteria for what constitutes a strong pace. There's really two main things that we need to look at: progress through the tech and civics tree, and the strength of our economy. The latter is simply a product of our production, faith, and gold per turn, weighted roughly such that 1 production equals 2 faith equals 4 gold. The former criteria, however, is not as simple as looking at the stat line. In particular, progress through the tech tree is often very disconnected from our science per turn. When playing Civ 6 at the top level on the online game speed, it's possible to get our science high enough to hit the soft cap of naturally researching 1 tech per turn for the rest of the game. Once you've hit this cap, there's no difference between 1000 science per turn and 2000 science per turn, because you're still limited to 1 tech per turn via natural research. However, that doesn't mean there aren't any ways to pick up more than 1 tech per turn. For instance, Oxford University instantly completes 2 technologies, and the great scientist Galileo can complete several technologies at once with the science granted by activating him. In order to account for these factors, we'll be evaluating these games based on the actual, concrete number of techs completed in the first 80 turns of the game. However, when it comes to the civics tree, there aren't as many ways of skipping ahead, and the soft cap of researching 1 civic per turn is almost never reached. Thus, progress through the civics tree tends to simply be a reflection of our culture per turn, and we can simply use that as the point for our comparison. Now that we know how we can evaluate these games, let's jump right into it with the number 5 entry on our list. This spawn shouldn't be legal, where I played as Scotland. The map type for this game is lakes, which means a massive landmass with plenty of space between each player and a number of small inland seas. Naturally, all of the spawns in these games are going to be incredible, and this one is no exception, as I start with a 2-3 spices tile in my first ring. This game, like all the games we'll be looking at, was played with a better balanced game mod, which nerfs spices from granting 2 food to merely granting 1 food and 1 gold. Even still, it remains as one of the best resources in the game. On turn 4, I meet a red city-state. Being the first player in the world to meet a city-state grants us 1 free envoy in it, and red city-states are among the best to meet early. At 1 envoy, they grant +1 production towards all units in the capital city. This means I'll be getting 1 extra production when producing all of my scouts and settlers in the early game. After settling my second city, I notice that there's a massive forest fire raging to my east, and decide to send the second settler I produced to go check it out. I'm rewarded with an absolutely incredible third city. Off the back of this city and choosing the city patron goddess pantheon, I'm able to finish my commercial hubs before anyone else and run 2 projects to secure the first great merchant of the game, Zhang Chen, granting me an extra trade route capacity for the rest of the game. Believe it or not, the cost of 2 commercial hub projects on the online game speed is actually cheaper than the cost of a market, making this merchant a fantastic deal. Afterwards, I play a mostly standard Scotland game, going for a standard commercial hub opener with internal trade routes and using golf courses, which are unlocked earlier in the better balanced game mod, to get some extra amenities in all of my cities. The one notable adaptation I make in this game is placing a heavier emphasis than normal on building theater squares and securing great writers. This is because I recognize that none of the civs present in this game traditionally build many theater squares, meaning that there would be much less competition than is typical for great writers, artists, and musicians. Like all great people, there's a limited number of these, and they become more expensive as more of them are recruited. Thus, the lack of competition from the rest of the lobby means that I'm able to recruit these great people much more cheaply than normal. Conveniently, many of the best wonders are also uncontested. I'm able to secure the Temple of Artemis, the Oracle, and the Colosseum, all at a fairly leisurely pace. Afterwards, I invest very heavily into industrial zones. This had been my plan all along, and I'd carefully position nearly all of my cities so that they can get intercity aqueduct setups for maximum industrial zone adjacency. This pays off, and I managed to pass 300 production per turn by turn 55. Now, whenever I find myself with massive production at this stage of the game, there's always one thing I make sure to do in order to convert that production into a victory. Secure the best Renaissance era great people by running city projects to generate bursts of great person points. In particular, there are 5 ones to keep in mind in order from least to most valuable. The scientist Galileo, who grants an instant burst of science when activated near mountains, the engineer Filippo Brunelleschi, who grants an enormous amount of production towards any given wonder, the engineer Leonardo da Vinci, who grants a random free Eureka from the modern era and grants +3 culture on all workshops for the rest of the game, the scientist Isaac Newton, who instantly constructs a library and university and also grants all universities in our empire +2 science for the rest of the game, and best of all, the scientist Ibn Khaldun, who grants 40% extra excess yields from happiness in our empire. Ordinarily, having +5 amenities in a city grants it 20% extra science, culture, production, gold, and faith. However, once Ibn Khaldun is activated, this increases to 28% extra science, culture, production, gold, and faith. However, it gets more complicated than that in the Better Balanced Game mod. This mod nerfs the extra yields in ecstatic cities from 20% to 16%, but for whatever reason, it didn't actually nerf the extra yields granted by Ibn Khaldun, who still calculates his supposed 40% multiplier based on the base game value of 20% extra yields in ecstatic cities. This means that Khaldun still grants 8% extra yields in all ecstatic cities, meaning that, in the Better Balanced Game mod, he increases our ecstatic city yield multipliers from 116% to 124%, meaning that he's actually granting 50% extra yields from happiness, not 40%. There's something that all of these great people have in common. They're all either scientists or engineers. This is fantastic for me as Scotland, since my civ gains extra scientist and engineer points passively just for keeping my citizens happy. Because of this, I'm able to generate the necessary points for a Renaissance-era great scientist passively, without even running any projects. In this game, I choose to pass on Galileo in order to save my great scientist points to aim for one of the bigger prizes of Newton or Khaldun, and I'm rewarded with the jackpot. I'm also able to secure Chichen Itza, which grants an incredible amount of production and culture to my rainforest-heavy empire. As for the great engineers, I'm able to get my hands on Filippo Brunelleschi on turn 70, basically ensuring that I'll be able to secure Oxford University. Now, let's take a step back and evaluate my stat line on turn 70. I have 353 science per turn, 422 culture per turn, 13.6 faith per turn, 305 gold per turn, and 698 production per turn. We'll be comparing this benchmark to the games we look at later in this video. Jumping forward a bit, as I start to push for a culture victory, the game is conceded on turn 81. My culture is sky high here, owing to 2 factors. There were 5 purple city-states in the game to increase the yields of my amphitheaters and museums, and nobody else in the lobby ever really competed for the great writers, artists, and musicians, allowing me to monopolize them at a bargain price. Turn 81 tends to be a rather pivotal moment in CPL, as it's the earliest turn in which the game can be legally conceded without requiring a completely unanimous vote. Here, I have 498 science per turn, 822 culture per turn, 4.9 faith per turn, 875 gold per turn, 1,027 production per turn, and 45 techs completed. This benchmark too will be compared against the turn 81s of the next 4 games we'll be looking at. Moving on to the 4th best game I've ever played, we have the oldest video on our list, Civ 6 Multiplayer FFA Maori Full Game, played over a year ago. Bear with the lower quality. Back then, I streamed at a lower bitrate, had a worse microphone, and played in an odd aspect ratio, hence the black bar at the top of the screen. Furthermore, the mod Top Panel Extension Pro hadn't yet become a staple in CPL, so this is the only game where we don't have access to the Empire-wide production UI element that it provides. Just like in the previous game, this one was played on the Lakes map type. Right away, we see that I have a 2-2-3 Cocoa tile in my capital's first ring, and that I've spawned on a continent split, ensuring that I'll have greater luxury resource diversity than I would have had otherwise. On turn 9, I first meet Auckland, one of the best city-states in the game for naval civs thanks to its suzerain bonus granting extra production on all coastal tiles. Remarkably, I'm able to get my cities to the +3 amenity breakpoint for the extra yields from being happy as early as turn 13. This is because my second city is settled directly on top of wine, and I'm able to improve 2 more luxury resources on the water with a builder that I purchased in my capital. On turn 15, I find a tribal village that awards my second city with free population, shooting it to 3 pop insanely fast. Afterwards, my third city is settled on top of a geothermal vent with phenomenal tiles to work all around it. Already, I'm off to a great start. I choose the Pantheon God of the Tides for extra culture on fishing boats, pump out 2 more settlers, and settle 2 more fantastic cities with high yield tiles in their first ring. It's worth noting that Maori gets +1 production on all unimproved woods and rainforests after researching the early Empire Civic, further boosting these yields. Also of note is that the southern city is benefiting from a forest fire that raged through 2 of its tiles early in the game. This may be the single most productive, powerful empire I've ever had on turn 31. With fishing boats boosted by the Goddess of Tides Pantheon, the suzerain bonus of Auckland, and Maori's inherent +1 food on fishing boats, and all of the unimproved woods and rainforests gaining +1 production from Maori's bonus, every city is working exclusively phenomenally strong tiles. Taking Penbrush and Voice as my Golden Age dedication and promoting the Governor Moksha for extra culture from population in a city pushes my culture to 36 culture per turn. In the early game, I go for a basic harbor opener based around leveraging trade routes for extra food and production, mixing in some discounted campuses and theater squares as they become available. As Maori, maximizing culture is the name of the game. This civ gains insane amounts of production on unimproved woods and rainforests by progressing through the civics tree. I want to reach the mercantilism and conservation civics as quickly as possible. Looking back on this game, it's my belief now that it's likely the best spawn I've ever had. It's remarkable how much better I could have played it if I was given the same spawn today. Back in December of 2023, I wasn't as good at the game as I am now, and especially wasn't as good at Maori in particular. For instance, I start going for the mausoleum at Halicarnassus too late and miss the wonder as a result, and I don't even found a religion in this game. Nowadays, my preferred build order for Maori involves placing a single holy site early to found a religion with the Jesuit education belief. This belief allows for purchasing campus and theater square buildings with faith, in order to take advantage of the faith that Maori naturally generates from their unique amphitheater replacement. In spite of all of these mistakes, this spawn is so remarkably good that I was able to pull off a strong enough pace to earn its spot at number 4 on this list. On turn 58, I unlock Mercantilism for the +1 production it grants to all unimproved woods and rainforest tiles. On turn 65, I basically seal the deal by grabbing the best 2 great people in the entire game, Isaac Newton and Ibn Khaldun. A turn later, Conservation kicks in to grant 2 more production on every unimproved woods and rainforest tile in my empire. Everywhere you look, the yields are ridiculous. A turn later, I complete the Kiwa Kisiwani Wonder and take control of 2 blue city-states and 2 brown city-states. This results in every city in my empire gaining 15% extra science and 15% extra production towards buildings. Let's compare the turn 70 stats I achieved here to the ones from the Scotland game. Here I have 374 science, 433 culture, 169 faith, 705 gold, and an unknown amount of production per turn due to the lack of the top panel extension pro mod. However, I estimate that my production is at least on par with the Scotland game, likely being even higher in reality. I push my lead here, securing the Forbidden City to unlock an extra wildcard policy slot and building Oxford University to complete 2 more technologies instantly. On turn 81, I have 714 science, 492 culture, 183 faith, 1187 gold, and an indeterminate amount of production per turn. The closest moment to turn 81 where I check the number of techs I've finished in this game is on turn 77, where we see that I have 44 techs finished. Because I finished 1 tech per turn for the next 4 turns, I know that I have 48 techs completed on turn 81, compared to 45 in the Scotland game. However, for the sake of fairness, I'll be subtracting the astrology and celestial navigation techs from the rankings. This is because these two techs are not required to unlock any other technologies in the tech tree, and therefore yield no advantage in the space race. These techs can be completely skipped in many games, such as I did in the Scotland game we looked at earlier. Overall, this was a remarkably strong performance, with more techs completed and a stronger economy on turn 81 than in the Scotland game, earning its place at number 4 on our list. Coming in at number 3 on our list is the game I titled When BBG Buffs Qin Shi Hong. What's noteworthy about this one is that it was played with a very specific version of the Better Balanced Game mod, the beta version patch 5.9a. One of the changes in this version of the mod was an experimental buff to Qin Mandate of Heaven. Ordinarily, this leader can have builders spend a build charge to add 15% progress towards completing any ancient or classical era wonder, but on this patch only, this ability was buffed to 20%. What ensued was one of the most outrageous games of multiplayer Civ 6 ever played. Let's break down the math on this ability real quick. When playing as this leader, we also get an additional build charge on all builders, and with each charge completing 20% of a wonder, this means that we can complete 80% of any ancient or classical era wonder for the cost of a single builder. However, this ability is also multiplied by effects such as the Core V policy card and the Monument to the Gods Pantheon. With these two effects, each build charge will now complete 27% of a wonder. This means that a single builder can now entirely complete any ancient or classical era wonder on its own. Unlike the previous two games, this one was played on the map type Pangaea, which consists of a single landmass surrounded by an ocean. Getting into the actual game, the first notable moment is when I receive a builder from a tribal village on turn 7. As I take the Monument to the Gods Pantheon, this builder would go on to complete the Stonehenge wonder for me nearly entirely on its own, giving me a great profit and allowing me to found my religion. Naturally, I choose the beliefs that grant additional yields on world wonders. From here, my goal is simply to spam as many useful world wonders as I possibly can. To facilitate this, I deliberately settled my second city so that it would have access to a flat desert tile nearby, allowing me to build the pyramids. This wonder easily pays for itself. Literally. Not only does it grant all current and future builders an additional build charge, it also grants a new builder instantly to replace the one that I expended in constructing it. Between the additional build charges from the Wonder and Qin Mandate of Heaven's leader bonus, all of my builders from here on out will start with at least 5 build charges. Pretty insane, considering that it only takes 4 build charges to complete 96% of a wonder thanks to my Pantheon. From here on out, the wonders just come pouring in. The Temple of Artemis is finished on turn 27, and the Hanging Gardens is finished on turn 29. To complement these, I place down several theater squares. The goal here is to go for a culture victory as quickly as possible, and these districts are key. For my Golden Age dedication, I take Monumentality, allowing me to spend all of the faith generated by my religion on buying more builders to construct more wonders. On turn 38, I finish the Oracle, putting it in the same city as the Governor Pingala with his grants promotion to double the Great Person points the wonder generates. With a theater square in this city, it'll be generating 6 Great Writer points per turn even prior to adding an amphitheater. Meanwhile, my capital finishes off the Colosseum on turn 39, my 6th wonder of the game. The Apadana is finished on turn 47, giving me more room to store my increasing number of great works. Following this, I carefully settled 2 more cities to allow me to meet the placement requirements for more wonders. In the north, Changsha makes an encampment so that I can build the statue of Zeus and the terracotta army, while in the west, Yiyang is able to build the Petra and places a harbor so that I can zone a variety of naval wonders. On turn 53, I finish the statue of Zeus, as my capital finishes the Great Library. It's important that I don't neglect traditional development, as I make sure to get some high adjacency campuses to shore up my science and some high adjacency industrial zones to bolster my production. I complete the Terracotta Army on turn 61, and 2 turns later I complete the Kilwa Kisiwani. To take advantage of this, I take control of 2 purple city-states and 2 brown city-states. I now have control of Brussels for 15% more production towards wonders, and Antananarivo for a massive culture amplifier empire-wide, in addition to getting 15% extra production towards buildings and 15% extra culture in every city from Kilwa Kisiwani. To top it all off, I secure the best great person in the entire game, Ibn Khaldun, granting all of my cities extra yields from happiness. On turn 64, I finished the Huey Teocalli. Turn 66 sees me finishing the Great Lighthouse, and on turn 67, I'm able to take both medieval era Wonder Production engineers and use them to finish the Bolshoi Theater for 2 random free civics, and the Forbidden City for another wildcard policy slot. We've hit turn 70 now, and it's time to take stock of my position. My science is respectable and my culture is insane, but my economy is pretty weak relative to the other games we've looked at so far. However, the most important stat here is actually my tourism. 327 is absolutely insane for turn 70. My culture victory is a massive looming threat, and with this much culture, I'm able to already grab the fascism government whenever I want for 50% extra production towards units and plus 5 combat strength in all scenarios. However, nobody is in a position to stop me, so I hold off on fascism for now in order to rush for a faster culture victory. On turn 71, I'm already buying rock bands, sending them on their way to the Byzantine Empire to finish off this game. Turn 76 sees me finishing the Oxford University for 2 free technologies, and on turn 77, I finish my final wonder of the game, Hermitage, allowing me to automatically theme some great works of art, as well as making more room to take advantage of Moksha's promotion for double tourism from great works in his city. Now, let's just fast forward to turn 81 to get the final benchmark for this game, and I won a culture victory. Okay, I cannot stress enough how unreasonable having 1520 tourism on turn 81 is. As far as I'm aware, this is the highest tourism anyone has ever achieved in a competitive multiplayer game on this turn. But enough about that. Let's look at the numbers. I have 416 science, 1037 culture, 187 faith, 463 gold, and 526 production per turn. The science looks weak compared to other games, but there's that soft cap of completing 1 tech per turn via natural research that I spoke of earlier. In reality, after excluding the astrology and celestial navigation technologies from the tally, I had 44 technologies completed on turn 81 here. It's a little behind the previous 2 games in terms of techs completed, but I'd trade 2 techs for 1500 tourism per turn any day. This was an absolutely legendary game. Coming in at number 2 on our list is the game titled They Forgot to Ban the Best Civ, where I played as the leader Tokugawa. To give some context, Tokugawa has long been considered the most overtuned leader in the better balanced game mod in free-for-all games. This is because the mod is primarily balanced around a 4v4 teams format, where the selfish internal trade route focus of Tokugawa isn't nearly as powerful as it is in free-for-all games. This game was played on the Pangea map type. From turn 1, I'm already off to a good start. I'm able to settle on top of Mercury to earn some extra yields on my city center, and choose to go for a builder opener in order to take advantage of the strong sea resources available to me. One advantage of a builder opener is that builders are the only land unit in the game that can embark prior to unlocking the shipbuilding technology. This means that, after spending 2 build charges, I'm able to use the builder as a highly effective scout by moving along the coastline. This pays off when the builder retrieves a tribal village that awards me with 10 faith, allowing me to choose my pantheon sooner. Of course, I go for God of the Sea for some extra production on fishing boats. My opening strategy is fairly conventional, rushing harbors and lighthouses in early cities in order to send some more internal trade routes to my capital. As the game rolls over into the classical era in turn 31, I've just barely managed to achieve a golden age with 19 out of 19 era score, allowing me to gain access to Penbrush and Voice. My capital just finished the government plaza, further boosting the yields of all internal trade routes by a significant amount. As Tokugawa, the name of the game is getting as many districts as possible in a single city as quickly as possible to maximize the yields on internal trade routes sent to it. This is why, on turn 33, I choose to go for a holy site in my capital, as this is the only district that I was able to get a discount on. How does district discounting work, you ask? It works in the most needlessly convoluted way possible. On turn 39, I begin construction on the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. This wonder is absolutely critical for this build order. For one, my emphasis on placing as many districts as possible in my capital, in conjunction with its cramped positioning on the coastline, means that I'll quickly run out of land tiles for its population to work. The extra yields granted on all coastal tiles from the mausoleum, therefore, are extra important. To further boost these yields, I secure suzerainty over the city-state of Auckland, which grants +1 production on all improved water tiles, doubling to +2 production later in the game with the industrialization technology. On turn 46, my capital finally places its 4th district, the Diplomatic Quarter. This district is one of the only 2 districts in the game, alongside the Government Plaza, which inherently grants +1 food and production to all trade routes sent to the city it's built in. At this point, my internal trade routes are becoming extremely juiced up. In the meantime, my other cities begin setting up their industrial zones. Thanks to Japan's bonuses causing all specialty districts to gain a standard adjacency bonus from all other districts, these industrial zones have massive adjacency bonuses. In fact, all of my districts have massive adjacency bonuses. To take advantage of this, when the game transitions to the medieval age, I switch my golden age dedication to free inquiry, causing all of my harbors and commercial hubs to grant science equal to their adjacency bonuses. At this point, it's finally time for me to start running industrial zone projects to secure some great engineers. This results in me taking Isidore of Miletus and B. Sheng. Thanks to the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, both of these engineers have an additional charge of their effects. B. Sheng in particular is insanely good for the Tokugawa build order. By activating him in my capital, I can get 2 more district slots, increasing the yield on all of my internal trade routes substantially. On turn 61, I finish researching the industrialization technology and recruit the best great person in the game, Ibn Khaldun. At this point, my empire is unbelievably strong. 280 science, 180 culture, 465 production. All of my stats are nearly double the benchmarks the top players aim for by turn 61 in a typical game. 2 turns later, I grab Leonardo da Vinci. This great engineer ordinarily grants +3 culture on all workshops with his effect. However, since I have the mausoleum at Halicarnassus, he actually has 2 charges. This means that I can stack his effect twice, gaining +6 culture on all workshops in my empire for the rest of the game. Now, finally, let's jump ahead to turn 70 to see how this game's stat line stacks up to the previous games we evaluated. Coincidentally, I managed to finish 2 top-tier wonders on this turn, Kiwa Kisiwani and University of Sankor. My stat line is ridiculous. 481 science, 338 culture, 57 faith, 315 gold, and 886 production per turn. In particular, the production is insane, allowing me to outcompete everyone else for wonders and great people. My capital is 8 districts finished already. Between my leader bonuses and the extra yields granted by the University of Sankor, this results in every internal trade route to my capital granting 8 food, 8 production, 10 gold, 9 science, and 8 culture per turn. All of this culminates in my earliest completion of Oxford University yet by far, finishing the wonder on turn 71 and gaining 2 free technologies in the process. From here, it's smooth sailing. Let's jump ahead 10 turns later and take stock of the final stat line from this game. On turn 81, I have 881 science, 479 culture, 74 faith, 392 gold, and a whopping 1249 production per turn. What's more, because my high science kicked in much earlier in this game than in previous games, I have more techs completed than ever, with a staggering 49 techs completed after subtracting the skippable astrology and celestial navigation technologies from the total. This pace seems truly, utterly unbeatable. However, in case you haven't noticed, this is only number 2 on the list. That brings us to the number 1 spot, the game which, in my opinion, is the cleanest game of Civ 6 I've ever played. Titled I Broke Civ 6 with the City-State, it's a game I played as the leader, Wilhelmina. The map type this time is once again lakes, meaning that there will be plenty of room to build out a very large empire. On turn 6, I meet the titular city-state, Qingguedi, which grants +1 faith on all trade routes for every follower of the suzerain's majority religion in the origin city. Now, Netherlands is a civ that doesn't ordinarily lean very heavily into religious play. However, as we're about to see, this single city-state is powerful enough to change everything. Shortly after meeting it, I find that I've spawned incredibly close to a natural wonder, Uluru. However, settling it right away is a trap, in my opinion. Instead, it's better to settle a coastal city east of my capital. By taking the Lady of the Reeds and Marshes pantheon, I'm able to buff up the 5-0 sugar tile into a 5-1, granting the city explosive growth without compromising on production. Furthermore, I want cities on the coast so that I can justify going for a harbor opening. My third city, however, does land itself on the Wonder, and it goes for a +4 holy site so that I can get started on founding the religion I need to get value out of Chinguetti. In the meantime, I spend my first governor title on Amani and assign her to the city-state in question where she can act as two envoys. In the Better Balanced Game mod, Amani further grants +2 food and production on all trade routes sent to a city-state she's assigned to. This synergizes with the inherent +2 culture that Wilhelmina gains on all trade routes sent to a foreign city, allowing me to get some high-yield trade routes right away. From here, I play a rather conventional harbor opener for the rest of the Ancient Era. On turn 31, however, I make a pretty exotic play. I go for the Monumentality Golden Age dedication, which allows me to spend faith on purchasing civilian units, instead of the more conventional Pen, Brush, and Voice dedication. As I'm only on 16 faith per turn at the moment, this may seem like a mistake. However, I know that my faith per turn will begin to skyrocket very soon, once I found my religion and begin to take advantage of Chinguetti's suzerain bonus. My first purchase using this Golden Age dedication is a builder in my southern city. Thanks to my assignment of the Governor Liang to this city, the builder comes equipped with 4 build charges instead of the standard 3. Liang here is putting in work. I've taken her promotion for +1 production on all floodplains tiles in her city, which naturally synergizes with the +1 production that the Lady of Reeds and Marshes pantheon grants on those same tiles. To round out the turn, I place a second holy site, this time in my coastal city of Red Light District. This is because, whenever we found a religion in Civ 6, the only cities of ours which are converted automatically are those which have a holy site or a Stonehenge wonder built in them. By building this holy site here, I ensure that this city will be among those automatically converted, saving me faith on buying missionaries. On turn 35, I finally found my religion. The beliefs are simple: Jesuit education to allow me to spend my faith on campus and theater square buildings, and tithe for some extra gold from every city following my religion. Right away, my faith per turn increases significantly as the suzerain bonus of Chinguetti is finally giving value to my trade routes. Turn 37 is when this game gets real. I finish the pyramids in my southern city, granting all current and future builders an additional build charge, and awarding me with a free builder immediately. As the pyramids was built in the same city as Liang, the free builder the wonder grants benefits from her inherent effect, starting it out with 5 entire build charges. Afterwards, the city starts on the Etamananki, which will ultimately propel it into a major powerhouse thanks to the additional 1 production in science granted on all of the floodplains tiles by the Wonder. On turn 41, I finish the Feudalism Civic, granting me access to the Serfdom Policy card for 2 more charges on all new builders. Of course, I take full advantage of this by immediately faith buying as many builders as I can, and begin to spam them in all of my cities. These builders easily pay for themselves by chopping all of the woods near me, granting huge bursts of production in every city. This results in my securing of the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, one of the best wonders in the game. At this point, I begin the process of painting my coastline with polders. In the Better Balanced Game mod, the Netherlands are mostly unchanged compared to the vanilla game, the one exception to this being the placement requirements of the polder. In the unmodded game, this unique tile improvement can only be placed on water tiles adjacent to 3 or more land tiles. However, in BBG, they only require a single land tile adjacent to water in order to be constructed. My land is absolutely perfect for this, allowing me to spam the hell out of this incredibly powerful tile improvement. What's even better is that this tile improvement synergizes immensely with the city-state of Chinguetti. You see, this city-state suzerain bonus becomes more powerful the more followers of my religion are present in my cities. Thus, the higher the population my cities reach, the more faith their trade routes will get. Thanks to the immense food and housing granted by polders, the Netherlands are capable of reaching higher populations in their cities than any other civ in the game, meaning that Chinguetti's faith generation will begin to snowball out of control as the game continues. Despite my decision not to choose the standard pen, brush, and voice Golden Age dedication, my culture ends up easily becoming the highest in the game, reaching 118 culture by turn 47. This is due to several factors. I gained plus 2 culture on all external trade routes from my Civ bonuses. I took advantage of the extra adjacency that rivers grant to my districts by placing some high adjacency theater squares, and I ran some theater square projects to recruit great writers. Furthermore, I've taken control of Vilnius to grant some further multipliers on all of my theater square adjacencies. This hasn't kicked in quite yet, but once my neighbors progress far enough in the civic tree to form alliances with me, my culture will gain a significant boost. I continue building out my empire as usual, placing industrial zones and campuses to ensure that I'll scale well. As the classical era approaches its end, my empire looks exquisite, with one industrial zone having an adjacency bonus as high as plus 10. On turn 55, I finally wave goodbye to the Monumentality Golden Age dedication. In its place, I take Free Inquiry, granting me science equal to the total harbor and commercial hub adjacency in my empire. So, what do I spend my faith on now that I can no longer buy builders or traders with it? That's where the Jesuit education belief I took when founding my religion comes in. While I've barely used it at all up until this point, now it'll take center stage. The city-state of Chinguetti practically prints libraries, universities, amphitheaters, and museums in all of my cities, allowing me to spend my production elsewhere, notably on city projects to earn great person points. Thanks to my projecting, I'm able to recruit the great scientist Isaac Newton, who instantly constructs a library and university, and furthermore grants plus 2 science on all universities for the rest of the game. A little later, on turn 61, I'm able to snag Galileo as well, whose effect grants a large burst of science based on the number of mountains adjacent to him when he's activated. Here, on turn 62, it looks like I've dropped my coveted 1 tech per turn pace, failing to complete square rigging on the rollover. However, Galileo fixes this. By queuing up industrialization and activating Galileo adjacent to 4 mountains, I'm able to finish both the square rigging technology and unlock industrialization on the same turn. Immediately afterwards, I choose to move the Governor Reina into my capital city. This is to take advantage of a, at the time, new promotion added by the Better Balanced Game mod, Foreign Exchange. This promotion grants an insane plus 2 culture and plus 2 science for every foreign trade route passing through the city. My allies are both sending a ton of trade routes to my capital, which means that this promotion has the potential to go crazy here. Why is it, you may wonder, that both of my allies are sending nearly all of their traders to my capital? The answer lies in the Netherlands' unique abilities. Not only do I receive 2 culture per turn on all international trade routes I send and receive, anyone who sends a trade route to me receives 1 additional culture per turn themselves. Furthermore, my capital's population is enormous thanks to the polders granting it incredible amounts of food and housing, meaning that I'm able to fit a large number of districts in the city. Every single district I've constructed slightly increases the yield of any trade route sent to it, making it stick out as the obvious trading destination for my allies. On turn 66, Reina finally establishes in the city, allowing me to pass 300 science and culture per turn. Because my allies have a total of 15 trade routes passing through that city, I'm earning 30 science and 30 culture from the foreign exchange promotion. On turn 70, I finish the Forbidden City, just in time for us to take a snapshot of my stat line for the sake of comparison. I have 430 science, 386 culture, 262 faith, 581 gold, and 619 production per turn. While I have considerably lower production here than I had in the Tokugawa game, my gold and faith per turn are far higher. The extra flexibility these yields offer compared to raw production is a huge boon, as I can spend them in any city in my empire. Jumping ahead to turn 81, I managed to just barely secure the Oxford University in time for the final comparison to take place. I have 726 science, 648 culture, 312 faith, 895 gold, and 854 production per turn. Remarkably, I even managed to tie the Tokugawa game in terms of techs completed. I have 51 techs finished, dropping to 49 once I subtract the skippable astrology and celestial navigation techs. There are two things which make this position preferable to that of the Tokugawa game. First off, I have a great deal more gold and faith per turn. These resources are more flexible than production, being able to be spent in any city in my empire. Secondly, I'm playing as the Netherlands, and therefore I have two dedicated, loyal allies. Thanks to all of the trading between us, we become interdependent upon one another, and I can rest easy knowing that a backstab is unthinkable. Tokugawa, in contrast, is a civ that sends no external trade routes and thereby cultivates no loyalty from its friends. It's the most commonly banned civ in multiplayer free-for-all games, and there are even players who go out of their way to target this civ with nukes in every game. So, that wraps up my list of the top 5 best games I've ever played in multiplayer free-for-all Civ 6. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below what the best stat lines you've ever achieved by these benchmarks are. You can also follow me at twitch.tv/Herson100 to catch full games of multiplayer Civ being played live. That's all for now. Herson signing out.